Hello, lovely people. I hope you're doing marvelously well. This is a fun video for me. I feel like this is a subject that hasn't been covered enough. As you know, we're called Produce Like a Pro. Now, we do, of course, talk a lot about mixing and other recording techniques, and even some songwriting and play some instruments, all this kind of fun stuff. But one thing that I think needs to be covered more is production techniques. Yes, obviously recording. Production, of course, though, is getting performances, capturing performances from artists. And this question is a really good one that was posed to me by several people over the last couple of months. And I thought to myself, let's do a video on it. So here it is. It's the top 5 tips on recording vocals. As ever, of course, please go to producelikeapro.com. You can sign up for the email list. There's a whole bunch of free goodies you can get. You can get drum samples, 3 multi-track sessions, you name it, tons of really fun stuff. Okay, there's 5 tips. I think tip 1 and tip 2 could be interchangeable as the most important tip. I'll let you make up your mind. You can agree or disagree with me below. So number 1, the headphone mix. This is a huge deal. Artists need a great headphone mix. Now, it doesn't have to be the most incredible mix with instruments panning around. In fact, sometimes some of the final mix stuff can be a little distracting for an artist, but it has to be a good mix. This is the interesting thing. Every artist has a different idea of what a good mix is. It doesn't matter if they're the world's most famous singer or an up-and-comer. They will have very specific needs, and they may or may not be able to communicate them. Yes, it's like that. You might have to read between the lines. But the number one thing you do before you send somebody into the vocal booth, or even if they're just standing behind you and you're both working on headphones, the number one thing to do is check their headphone mix. Now, it's quite likely in a home environment or a small studio environment that they're hearing the same thing as you, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's what they want. So, great communication with the artist. Put on those headphones. Get a mix up that you're happy with, that you think sounds impressive, with a vocal sitting just loud enough in front so they can hear themselves. But ask them some questions. Number one question maybe to ask them is, do they have their own headphones? Do they prefer the sound of a specific headphone? And if they do, defer to that. Some singers actually travel with their own headphones. Not all and not many, but some do. So getting a good headphone mix is of paramount importance. Lots of singers like to sing completely dry with no effects. Other singers love to be swamped in reverb and delays. Find out in advance. Make them feel comfortable by asking them what they want with their headphone mix. It is a good idea, if you can and you have the budget, to have a couple of different types of headphones to give different results. Some headphones maybe have a really low extended bass, and others maybe the opposite, super bright, and you'd be surprised. Artists prefer quite drastically different things. And older artists that I've worked with tend to like brighter headphones because their high end deteriorates as they get older. So you might want to have a pair of super bright headphones for them. For some of the younger artists, they might prefer that as well, but they also might prefer something extended low end. Now, obviously not all of us have the budget to have several pairs of headphones, but it's a nice thing to have. The other thing, if you can, have a pair of headphones with some really, really good isolation. I like extreme isolation headphones. There are many, many others on the market. Even the drummer headphones like Vic Firth. Not the best sounding headphones, but they are good for certain situations. The kind of situations where maybe you're tracking a really, really beautiful, compressed sounding vocal over just an acoustic guitar or a simple piano part, but the singer requests a drum beat, or worse still, a click, going like that, like a pitchfork through your head. And you're sitting there tracking a really beautiful, I don't know, click, click. That's where isolation headphones can come in. If you don't have several pairs of headphones, it's okay. Whatever you've got, you can make do. Just get a really good mix up there and listen to the artist and get something that they're looking for. Number 2, and we did sort of touch on this with the headphone mix, because ultimately getting a good headphone mix does what? It makes the artist feel comfortable. So this is equally as important. Make them feel comfortable. And that could be anything. That could be the lighting in the room. Maybe they want the lights down. A lot of artists don't want to be stared at when they're singing. However, a lot of artists do. A lot of artists like an audience. So that's something you need to kind of ascertain. If you're working with a band, you can have a dude who's got tons of bravado, like a rock guy. But you know what? When he gets in there, he gets vulnerable, even if he's half screaming. Maybe he wants to perform for his band, but maybe he just wants the band to leave and he wants to just like get in there and talk about the lyric and what it means and get some interaction with you as the producer. So it's your job as the producer to read the room. Know your artist, and if you've got all of the musicians going a little nutty and crazy and they're taken away from the process, then ask them to leave. You can be the bad guy. That way you take away the responsibility from the singer. You get to understand what's good for them and what's good for the end result. Because whatever's good for the singer is going to be good for the band. The other thing is like the little things. It could be subtle things like, do they want a cup of tea? Do they want some water? Now, you've been told this and there's lots of conjecture. Don't give them really, really cold water. Don't give them boiling hot drinks. And I think I've had people argue about this, but the reality is like a nice warm cup of tea isn't really going to be the end of the world. If that's what they need to make themselves feel comfortable, then it's great. I highly recommend for those of you that want to do a little bit of research on producing in general, especially vocals, read Phil Ramone's book. Phil Ramone talked about working with Sinatra, Nat King Cole, Barbra Streisand, all of these old school famous singers that were probably relatively high maintenance, but he would do those things. He would have their mic ready to go. He would have their headphone mix ready to go. He would have their lyric sheet sitting in front of them, ready to go. And he would have whatever their favorite drink was ready to go. These aren't big efforts. This isn't a difficult thing to do. If you've got 10 minutes before the singer's about to sing, do a little preparation. Get that lyric sheet up. You will want a lyric sheet yourself for comping vocals, so it's good to ask for a lyric sheet so you can comp, but it's also great to have one there in case they want to refer to it. So have the lyrics, have a drink, and above all, make them feel comfortable. Number 3, the microphone choice. Now, I put this third, and for many people with a huge array of microphones, this is a big deal if you've got a lot of choice. But many people, of course, are home studio guys and girls who have maybe 1, possibly 2 microphones at their disposal. So the reason why I bring this up is just to be cognizant, to be aware of this. If you have a singer who has a mic they love and they mention it while you're recording, they're telling you something. Read between the lines. They're telling you, oh, you know, I really like this AKG, this Shure, this whatever it might be, this EV, this Neumann, whatever it is. So a lot of this comes back to listening to your singer. So if your singer is telling you about a microphone that they love, one that they own possibly, have them bring it in. Indulge them. Let them feel comfortable. And if that microphone isn't as good sounding as yours, that's absolutely great. But at least they got to go on their microphone and hear how much better yours was. The other thing is, and this is really important, is there's different reasons to choose microphones beyond their sound. There's lots of debates on forums about whether this model is better than that model, whether spending $1,000 on this is better than spending $10,000 on that or $100 on this. All of that is important to an extent, but we all know the most important thing is the performance. The performance is far more important than anything else. If you just happen to get an amazing performance and you capture it on an iPhone, that's better than putting a U47 up and getting nothing. Not that I'm saying record with an iPhone. You understand the point. Performance is key. So if you only have one mic and that is it, that is the mic you're using, and it's okay. We're speaking here to when you have choice and also listening to the artist's wants and needs. If you do have choice of microphones, even a couple, are you going to go condenser over dynamic? Now, obviously, 99% of the time, we use a large diaphragm condenser. But there are reasons why you might want to use a dynamic microphone. One of those, really importantly, is if you've got a singer who's never sung in a studio before, maybe the only time they've ever sung with a microphone is live. There's a very famous story of Zach De La Rocha doing the first album holding a microphone, which I believe was probably, from what I remember, a 57. Not that it's important. It could have been a 58, could have been something else. The point was he handheld. There's other stories of Chrissie Hynde lying on the couch holding a dynamic microphone, lying on the couch, just singing along in a scratch method after they had been trying to get an amazing vocal for that Stand By You. And the story goes, whether it's right or wrong, I just like the story. The the story goes is that that's the one they used because she was relaxed. The point is like those were other reasons other than the sonics. They were about the number one thing, performance. We are going for performance. So it's always good to have a handheld mic if you can when you're working with an inexperienced singer or somebody that likes to jump around and have fun when they're singing and just wants to rock out and get into it. That's a more important thing than having a $15,000 condenser. Because if they get in front of that $15,000 condenser and freeze and go, "I'll stand by you," who cares? It doesn't matter. You might have the best sounding, out of tune, out of time, unemotional vocal ever. That doesn't matter. Performance is king. The creativity, as you know, beats all of the sonics, all of the expensive equipment, you know. So it's good to have a couple of microphones. If you only have two and one's a large diaphragm condenser, could only be a $200 large diaphragm condenser and a 57 at $100. Those are two really good choices. Now, obviously there's millions of other microphones, but it's good to have a couple of different styles of microphones in your arsenal for those different kind of situations. Number 4, this is a big one because it involves a lot of opinions. Doesn't everything always? The distance from the mic. We all know, or if you don't, we'll talk about it, that when you get close to a mic, you get a proximity effect. And what does that mean? Well, it's as simple as this. You're in a cardioid pattern, you get really close, it gets super warm sounding. When you get back, some of that warmth disappears. So technically, most people will say to be about, you know, anywhere from like, I don't know, 8 to like 18 inches away. I've heard all kinds of variations. Roughly about that far away to about this far away to get back from the mic a little bit so you don't get so much proximity. The reason why people say that, for logical reasons, is if you're super close and you turn your head, it gets off axis and it goes from sounding really warm to very thin quite easily. Obviously, when it's back this far, that proximity is not going to be as much of an effect. And there's lots of other reasons. The other reason, of course, is plosives, which is when you get right up in it, you get plosives against the microphone. The other thing you get is excessive sibilants, could be when you're right up on the mic. However, remember that getting up on a mic is also another tool in your arsenal. A lot of well-known vocals I've done, like The Fray, when I did those kind of sensitive sounding songs like Ungodly Hour or Enough for Now. I don't know if you guys know that from the second album. Those vocals, which was both Isaac and Joe, was sung right up here because we wanted that closeness. We didn't want to hear any room whatsoever, even though we were in a vocal booth, and we certainly wanted that warmth that can be got from here. So it is important to get an average distance around about here, but remember, getting close to the microphone can give you an effect that can be very pleasing on certain songs. Also, pop screens. There's a couple of fun things. Now with pop screens, they can really reduce those plosives and they can really reduce some of the excessive sibilants. One of the other things that we would do in England is we take our pop screen and we put a pencil across it. Believe it or not. So the pencil would be strapped across the middle of the pop screen. Does that make sense? You tape it like this on each side. And what that did was break up some of the air. You know, there's been all kinds of theories on that, but I've seen a lot of people in England do it. I've been doing it for years. If you've got somebody who's particularly like this, it sort of breaks up the air. Now, I'm sure people will fight me on and tell me it's wrong, but it's a trick that a friend of mine who works at the BBC showed me. Wow, so many years ago that it's twice the age of some of the people I work with. So plosives, sibilants, you don't want. That's where a pop screen is going to come in. It's a small investment. I think you can get them for like $10 or $15 from Amazon or pretty much anywhere. There's some really wonderful, expensive ones for those of you who want to spend a lot of money. I think mine is a typical kind of $30 one I've had for as long as I can remember. Every now and then, a quick tip, get some rubbing alcohol, or actually another one that's really, really good is to get breath freshener and just kind of like wipe it down, because after a while you've got, you know, hundreds of thousands of people screaming and spitting into your pop screen. So clean it on a semi-regular basis so it doesn't smell of other people's germs. Number 5. And really important, is the singer ready to record? I'm split into two opposing camps on this, and I think both have a lot of validity. Number 1, is your singer properly rehearsed before singing? Number 2, do they need to be rehearsed or do you need to be capturing? You have to ask yourself, if you're going in to make an album and the band have been touring or haven't been touring, more importantly, and they've worked on 10 or 12 new songs, Has the singer been scratching out lyrics while you've been working on the material? Was he or she out in the live room with the band singing scratch, boo-doo-doo-da-da vocals, and are they still writing those lyrics? And if they are, then maybe you need some rehearsal time with them. Maybe they need to take away rough mixes and they need to work on that before you even get them in the room. So it's a big deal. Are they rehearsed? More importantly, do they need to be rehearsed? So why am I saying that? Well, if you're writing and recording, often, very, very often, the best vocal you will ever get is that vocal that was recorded when you wrote the song. And I can give you so many instances of that. I've worked on many, many albums where the singer has finished writing the song and is fresh and in the zone and wants to go in there and do it, and has just worked out the final part of the melody and is so excited to do that. That was true of the Aerosmith album. It was true of the Frey albums. Most famously, of course, Adele with Someone Like You. She wrote and recorded that song at the same time. She wrote it with Dan Wilson, and my producing partner, Phil Allen, recorded it. And it was the demo. They finished writing the song. She went in there, she sang it like 3 times. From what I can remember from Phil, they used most of one take and then put a little couple of different pieces. And that ended up becoming the final master, and of course was the song that was #1 in, I don't know, 13 countries or something. So the point is that she was in that zone. She was thinking about the song. She was thinking what the lyrics meant to her at that time. So the question is the singer in the right place to sing? Are they ready to sing? So you have to ask yourself that question. If they've been writing lyrics and they've never even sung it down, then they should probably rehearse to it. You need to print them a rough mix. They need to go home. They need to go into the other room. Whatever it is, they need to go and work on that before you put them in front of the microphone. If you've just finished writing the song, then the best time to get that vocal is now. They just finished it. They're excited. They're in that zone. They have the melody finalized. They have the lyric finalized. And most importantly, whatever they've written means something to them in that time. It's very hard to come back to a song 2 years later that was about a breakup of a guy or girl that you no longer care about and put you back into that zone and be like, oh, I don't really care. I'm not really emotionally attached to that person. Hopefully that helped. Please, as ever, sign up for the email list. Go to producelikeapro.com, sign up for that. Subscribe. There's plenty of other wonderful stuff coming up. Thank you ever so much for being a huge part of this community. Please leave me some comments and questions below. And also, let's share some of your experiences with recording vocals with different artists. Thank you ever so much for watching. Have a marvelous time recording and mixing, and I'll see you all again very soon.